Welcome everyone. And on behalf of Strategic Retirement Partners, we are just thrilled to have many of you back for the second session of Fierce Finances. As I mentioned previously, my name is Sarah Krapek. I'm the moderator for today's event, as well as the Director of Participant Education for SRP. And as is typical with our live events, all the lines are going to be muted, but we welcome your questions, especially today, since this session is all about the questions. If you have one, type it in using that chat feature on your screen. I'll be monitoring them throughout, and we'll get to them after a few short remarks from our panelists here. When we hosted the first Fierce Finance event on November 10th, the four of us were really just blown away by the registrations, the engagement, and most of all, the amazing questions that came through. After the event wrapped, we knew there was so much more to discuss as women, which is what brings us to today. We just have to assume that each person who registered for this session is bringing something with her, whether it's a question, a curiosity, maybe it's a financial conundrum or some underlying fear. Our goal is to ensure that every single one of us can walk away with that nagging concern having been addressed and maybe a more confident way to take action in our financial lives moving forward. So, just a little word about SRP. As your retirement plan advisor, we want every single one of you to be able to have the opportunity to retire with dignity and grace. But we also know that retirement isn't the only pressing financial issue that we face as women. There's an awful lot of life that happens between where each of us are sitting right now and our eventual retirement. So SRP's ability to help extends beyond just the retirement plan. And if you're seeking some planning or investment guidance and would like to speak with a member of our team, you can certainly email us at plantoday@srpretire.com, and you'll see that email address right up listed on the screen before you. So with that, just a quick note on today's format. I am going to ask our Fierce Finance panelists, Shannon, Lisa, and Jackie, to introduce themselves once again and give a quick recap of their remarks from our last session. As we're doing that, please feel free to start shooting some question topics our way via the chat feature, and then we'll spend the majority of our time together on that Q&A. So with that, I'm going to ask Shannon, one of SRP's founders and managing directors, to take it away. Shannon.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So I am the representative for Gen X and baby boomers, apparently. So I'm the oldest in the group. So yes, my favorite movie when I grew up was E.T. So if you can relate to me, I am here to help you. And one of the things we want to talk about today is the fact that once we say the word money, it elicits an emotional response. It is not just a means to an end. It is so much more than that. Our money behavior is rooted in our past, wherever we grew up, what our parents did and did not do, and the overwhelming challenges that we have today in the present. But I have a secret. Shh, listen. We can overcome our emotional money baggage. We can put it down, or we can at least unpack it a little bit, and we're going to share some of those secrets today. But the most important one is to talk honestly and openly about our money troubles and our money successes. This will take away the stress, the shame, and the secrecy that surrounds our money lives.
Perfect. Thanks, Shannon. Lisa?
In the last session, we really focused on how you can put your savings to work for you. And we talked about the two factors that really matter the most are how much you save and your mix of investments. Not getting into that nitty-gritty details of specifically what investment I'm choosing. And there's many approaches to investing, from a hands-off, do-it-for-me approach to a very hands-on, I'm going to call all the shots approach. We also talked about tax diversification, the importance of having a mix of taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free buckets of money available to you. We know, as Sarah mentioned, that there are many competing priorities when it comes to where to save. So we shared some ideas on how you might prioritize your savings goals and how that might fit in with any debt you might be working to pay down. So I'm sure we're going to get questions in a number of those different areas again today. So feel free to queue them up in that chat feature while Jackie recaps the joy of spending.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jackie Hendricks. I'm the Director of Business Development here at SRP, and I am the token millennial on this call. So in my segment, like a token millennial, we covered the joy of spending. And for a lot of us, spending equals guilt. And the purpose of my segment was to open you up to the fact that spending can be an absolute joy when it aligns with your values. We discussed how spending on experiences and not things, and that's especially timely advice with the spending season upon us. And maybe you consider this time of year to give your loved ones experiences or experiential objects that you can participate in. The second thing that we discussed was time on the clock. And another proven way to spend money to bring you joy is to use it to buy you time. This could be as simple as ordering on Uber Eats or hiring a house cleaner or having your local neighbor kid shovel your driveway this winter. And last but not least is spending on others. And this is one way that science has proven that spending can bring us joy. Spending on others, and especially your loved ones and your family members, can bring you immense joy. So in conclusion, it's not about the money that you make, it's about what you do with it. And once you have all your necessary bills paid for, you should consider spending your hard-earned income on things that bring you joy and spending joyfully to make sure that your spending aligns with all of your values. Sarah?
Perfect. Awesome recap, Jackie. Thanks to all three of you. And now we are going to dive into the Q&A portion of today's event. And what I did was really just brought up some topics that come up time and time again when you search on top financial concerns for women. Men face some of these too, but these are really specific concerns that most of us women have at the top of our list. So to inspire some of our conversation today, I just thought I would put up a couple of these topics as we get started, and maybe that would trigger an area of concern or question for one of you that's on the call with us. We are going to kick off the Q&A with a question coming in from Beth, who says, I want to set up two of my children for financial success in the long run. One way to do that is to help with college, hopefully paying in full, and keeping that burden off of them. She says that her math shows she's on track, but some professional analysis projects that it will only cover about 50% of her children's needs. So the ultimate question is, how do I save enough in a 529, but not too much, which could create a tax burden? Lisa or Shannon, do either of you have some commentary to weigh in for Beth?
I'm happy to start, and then maybe Shannon, you'll have something to add. It sounds like you've addressed what I think is sometimes the most challenging part, which is first setting a goal, knowing how much you want to save or how much you want to contribute to your children's college. And so it sounds like you've set that goal, looking at those projections and determining how much you need to save along the way. I might want to dig in a little bit deeper on the difference between your calculations and some professional analysis to see where there may be a gap. And in reference to your question about tax burden, I'd be thinking a little bit about 529 doesn't have to be the only place that you save for college. So while that is one vehicle that's been specifically designed for college, if you're getting to the point where you're concerned, there's so many unknowns. You don't know if your children are going to get a scholarship. You don't know if there could be changes from our federal government that impact what college looks like, or state governments. I'm in New York, so that's been a big topic in New York the past couple of years. So that definitely resonates with me. I have 3 small children and think about these same things. How do we know that we're not saving too much, right? So I would think a little bit about, it doesn't have to just be the 529. There can be other vehicles that maybe serve multiple purposes. So maybe the primary purpose is college savings, but there may be some other uses if maybe we don't need that money for college savings. And then my last point before I turn it over to Shannon or Jackie for more comments would be to keep in mind if you have multiple children, you can save for child number one, and then whatever you don't spend on child number one can be transferred to another child. So you have the opportunity to kind of shift and waterfall, if you will, those dollars down to other children.
Those are great points, Lisa. And you can also waterfall that down to additional education for yourself if all of your children's colleges are paid for. I think that one of the things I want to address is how do you set your children up for success in the long run? Two things to remember. Number one, make sure that your retirement is taken care of first, because you cannot get a loan in retirement and your children can. And I think that Jackie will talk a little bit about paying off your student loans. Number two, remember that we don't know where they're going to go to college. So the best planning that we can do may not help with their college if they happen to get into Harvard, but it may do just fine if they get into a state school. So, and it also has to factor in their room and board. And that goes to Lisa's point about having some other accounts that may be designated for college, but not specifically within the 529. So definitely take a look at that. And along the way, my kids are 12 and 16. So we're right in that planning stage. My 16-year-old is a junior, and we are looking at colleges now. And we've been letting her dream about every kind of place that she wants to go. Next year, when she's a senior, we're going to have those conversations about where she can go. It's a financial discussion as well as an academic discussion. And we've been setting her up for that for years. And the fact that every check she's gotten as a child, she gets to spend a little bit of it. She has to save a little bit of it. And then she kind of gets to decide, does she want to give some of it away? Does she want to buy her sister a present with that? Because my kids' birthdays, we didn't do a very good job planning. So they're both in the same month. So, but we try to set that and instill that ahead of time, and that they have to save for what they want. They don't get to go out and buy their AirPods right away. We can, of course, do that for our kids, but I think we set them behind a little bit because we're so excited to be able to provide for them that they don't get the joy of waiting for something that they want. So making them wait so they understand how long it takes to raise a couple $100s for a set of AirPods is very important. And then also along with the college, we've already set up, we will pay for college, but you have to get a B or better. So those are some of our thoughts. Jackie?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest child in my family, and I have a lot of younger family friends. And one of the things that I always tell those kids in high school is take those AP courses, knock those out right away. That's going to be the cheapest thing to do in high school. I wish I did more of that in high school. One thing that I took advantage of is we had an awesome local community college in my area. And I went there for 2 years and took all of my electives at that school. So I really didn't have any student loan going into, I went to University of Illinois. So that really, really helped with the student loan burden. And another tidbit is, if appropriate, and this doesn't line up for a lot of people, but say you're getting a business major, you don't need to declare a major to a college, say the School of Business, until maybe your sophomore year. And that can save you about $1,000 to $2,000 a year. That's one of the things that a lot of my friends waited on, and that helps, that adds up. And one of the things that I always told my brothers, and I said, you need to calculate that loan payment. That's real money when you come out of school. And then you need to figure out how much money you're going to make with your projected career. So for me, it was I had almost $600 per month for my student loans, and that was real money. So like Shannon said, and teaching the kids what that actually means and what that looks like coming out of your paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful input from all three of you. Thank you so much. We have a couple other questions rolling in. So we're going to jump from saving for college to saving together. A question comes in, says, any logistical tips for saving for a joint goal with a partner without having a joint bank account yet? I'm living with my long-term boyfriend, and we would like to start saving for a wedding, which is very expensive, but we don't have the same accounts just yet. So when you're just starting out your financial life together, how do you get that financial footing?
I'll start with that one, and then I'll turn it over to Jackie and Lisa, since I know Jackie is also looking at some of these similar issues. For us, when I was with my now husband, when we wanted to save for something, we set up a third account. You don't have to have one account to start. Set up a third account, and both of you agree a percentage of your income or whatever you're going to save in there, because you may be making different amounts, and a percentage is easier to calculate and to think of as fair than I'm going to contribute $300 and they're going to contribute $300 a month. And then $300 for you is a sacrifice and $300 for him is really easy peasy. So make sure that you're doing that, but set up a third account. It will also show you how they save for money, how they think about money, how you think about money, the emotional baggage that they have. Are they a spender? Are they a saver? Do they want the finest things for the wedding? Do they want the cheapest things for the wedding? Those kind of financial discussions to start having now are going to set the tone and the foundation for your married life going future. Because just like the wedding is one day and the marriage is a lifetime, finding out how you guys approach your finances is really important. And even if you've been living together, your approaches can be different if you haven't been having that shared bank account.
I feel like I'm in the same exact boat. I'm also in California, and we're looking at, my long-term boyfriend and I are looking at getting married, and it just doesn't make sense to get married in California. It's just so expensive. Our family's across the country in Illinois. So we're looking at getting married out of state when that happens. Another thing is, it started before dating, and I think my parents did a really good job with this, is making sure that I picked a partner that had the same values around spending as I did. So I really like to, I love food. I love to go out to eat, but I also like to save money and cook inside our house. So that's one of the things that I really needed to align with my partner on. And those big purchases, we just always have to be on that same plane and make sure that we're in it together. But I wish you the best of luck. California is super expensive, and I would really encourage you to look out of state if that's possible. I don't know how people afford it here. It's crazy.
I'll just add one thing from my own experience. I think I also was blessed in that I found a partner who has similar spending habits to me, which is we're probably maybe sometimes a little too thrifty. However, I have helped a number of friends kind of work through what if I'm a spender and my significant other is a saver, or vice versa? And I think communication is the number one priority. Is you just need to be clear and communicate what your plan is. And so if you do find yourself where you are one money type and your significant other is another, sometimes it can be helpful to just say, okay, you get X number of dollars. We each get X number of dollars to do whatever we want with. No judgment, no shame. So if you want to go spend your X number of dollars on nice cheese and they want to save it for a rainy day, you can each do what you'd like with that dollar amount without, or, having some rules around if you're going to spend more than X dollars, that needs to be a joint decision so that the spender doesn't go wild on Cyber Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, I think too, you do a good job with saving for a long-term goal. So even if that's like a month or a year out, what do you have, or what advice do you give to people to kind of chunk that out?
Yep. So I have 2 tips as it relates to this. I've heard not just financial habits, but all of our habits as couples are much more moldable, like wet cement at the beginning of our relationship, right? So if the cement is still wet, meaning the relationship is new, then it's easier to mold and really bring these habits in alignment with one another. But the longer that you put it off, that cement hardens and it becomes really, really challenging. Like you have to take a chisel to it later in your relationship. So I think this is a great question to ask at the beginning of a relationship to see if you can really mold your values and your goals and your habits into something that's going to work for both of you long term. I am also a huge fan of having multiple accounts. And Shannon mentioned this. Back in my 20s, I had one checking account. My husband came to our marriage with one checking account. And I think now between the two of us, we may have 6 or 7 household accounts. One of them is for education. One of them is for Christmas. One of them is for, daily expenses. One of them is for kid related, sporting events and activities. That way we're appropriating money on a very regular basis towards each of these buckets. And there is lots of behavioral finance research that shows that these bucket strategies really are successful because it takes the guesswork out of it, puts the automation into it so that it eliminates those emotionally driven conversations that we have to have with our partner on an ongoing basis. So just a couple things that work for me, not just saving for a wedding, but trying to appropriate funds across a lot of different areas. So we've talked a little bit about starting life out maybe with a partner or planning for a wedding, but I'm getting an interesting question that says so many long-term financial guides assume that a person has a life partner. For millennial women who are less likely to have a partner, how do you assess how your savings strategies are doing? So this is for all the single ladies out there, and there are plenty of us. How do we really set our sights on some long-term goals and assess ourselves along the way?
I think this applies to all generations of single women, and it's not just for millennials. There have been single women in every generation. I think the most important thing is to take a step back and decide, what are your long-term goals? Number one, understanding that we live longer. How long do you want to be in the workforce? Are you going to stay in your current job? Do you want to move into a different job at some point in your career? Do you want to start your own business? What are those goals? And then determining which ones are the most important, and then putting a dollar value on those particular goals, because there's a ton of different calculators out there to help you assess whether you're on track for retirement, whether you're on track for starting your own business, whether you're on track for, becoming the head of a charity and becoming something that you want. All these kinds of things are available, and it's just about goal setting. And that's no different if you have a partner or you don't have a partner. But you do have to take some time to do that inner soul searching about what's important to you. And then, as Jackie said earlier when she was talking about the joy of spending, what are you willing to do and not do in order to get those goals? Jackie or Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. I agree with everything you just said. I think if you're, depending on what your goal is, there are a ton of great calculators. And I just echo Shannon's comment that many times those calculators, if you're using, for example, your retirement plans, the record keepers calculator, the calculator that's available on your retirement platform, oftentimes they're using a unisex life expectancy. And so, you may just want to take a look at that and see what year or what age they're using for life expectancy and consider bumping that out a little bit. There are a lot of statistics that say that because women do live longer, that women are more likely to experience poverty in retirement. So I would just take a close look at what the assumptions are that are being used in those calculations.
Yeah, and Lisa, the assumption that we use most often as a default in SRP's retirement income calculator is out to age 90. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that?
Well, I think it's a great starting point. And I think each of us need to kind of view it through the lens of our own experiences. So for example, I have had several grandparents that lived into their 90s. Knock on wood, hopefully I got those genes, right? If you're someone who has maybe some medical issues, or you look at your own your own family's life expectancy or life experience, and you think, a lot of people passed away sooner than that. I think you want to be realistic and think about how your own personal experience may feed into what the average is.
Yep. But we definitely shouldn't be planning to age 70. Let's just all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to double back here, and we have a question from Shireen that says, I've tried looking for a good financial planner, but feel like the cliche woman buying a car or having it serviced. I'm not sure if I'm getting a sales pitch, being taken advantage of as a woman, etc. Any advice on talking points so that I sound knowledgeable and confident? I want to get good, honest service and not be ripped off.
Can
I
I take the
really,
first run at this? Or do you want?
Lisa.
Ah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
All right. I started my career working and supporting about 65 different financial advisors. And so I really had the opportunity to see a variety of styles, even within one particular model. And then knowing that there are many different models when it comes to financial planner. And so I think that in terms of sounding knowledgeable and confident, I don't think you need talking points. I think you need questions. All you need to do are ask the right questions. And so there are a number of questions that you might ask, like who is responsible for setting meetings or maintaining communication? What exactly should I expect from you? What happens when there's volatility in the market? Should I expect a phone call from you? Should I call you? What has been your experience in similar periods in the past? If your goal in working with a planner is around projections and making sure that I'm saving enough and things like that, then you want to ask questions that really pertain to what you're most focused on. And I think that in the end, if you ask some good questions, you can email us. I actually have a list of questions that I keep in my back pocket to share with people like you. So I think if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right feeling. You'll know when you found the right person, because it should be someone that you like and trust, that you just feel like this is right. I don't know. It's a little bit like dating, I guess.
Yeah, I think, Lisa, those are awesome suggestions and points. And the most important thing to remember is you need to interview people. You are the client, and you need to do probably at least 3 people until you feel like you're with the right person. We spend more time shopping for a refrigerator than we do for a financial planner, and we spend more research on it. So if you don't have a good feeling, if they're talking down to you, if they're not going to explain, ask them how they explain a complicated concept like dollar cost averaging or market volatility. See how they talk to you. Are they going to explain it to you? Are they going to only talk to you? When I first got married, I had been single for a long time, and I was shocked at how everyone talked to my husband and not me. My husband is in the legal profession. He will read every contract and every fine print you've ever seen, but he will not know anything about investing or buying a house or doing anything. That's all on me. And I think that's one of the things that you need to make sure that they understand, that you're the CFO of your money. And if you don't get that feeling, you walk away until you find someone, and it may take you a while. Don't get discouraged. There is the right person out there. There's a lot of wonderful people in our field that can help you, but it's got to be the right fit.
I would also add a couple tips to that. I would measure any initial meeting with a financial advisor or really any other professional by how much talking are you doing versus how much talking are they doing. Because a lot of people in our industry love to dominate the conversation. They like to talk about complex topics and try to impart all this knowledge on you, when really a sound financial or any type of advisor should be learning more about you, because they're not going to help you achieve your goals unless they understand what your goals are. And they can't understand it if they're just spouting off about all their industry accolades and awards or, complex knowledge. So I would see how comfortable you feel conversing and sharing with that person. And another huge indicator, I think, is eye contact. If you are there alone, then obviously it's easier to make eye contact one-on-one. But if you happen to be there with a partner and the advisor is only talking to your partner. And this goes for males and females. It really doesn't matter who the advisor, who the client is, but you need to be able to make a connection, and that person needs to see you. They need to acknowledge you. They need to listen to you. So there are some very tangible things that I would ask about. What's their philosophy? What's their process? What can I expect in terms of service level? And pricing. I want to clearly understand how you get paid and how I'm going to pay you. But once you get all those tactical things out of the way, make sure that you feel like it's a good foundation for a relationship, which indeed will be long term. So that's just my perspective on that piece. So I'm going to circle back to a question that came in from Kara, and it was about that bucket strategy that we mentioned. She said, can you provide any suggestions on where to get multiple accounts to have low fees, no minimum balances to start that bucket strategy savings for someone who may be farther down there in their financial life, or for someone who might just be starting out? And what I would say to that is just a simple bank account. When I was talking about multiple checking accounts, I wasn't talking about high net worth accounts at all. These are sometimes accounts that reach zero balances after I pay off a certain bill or something each month. So I would say just basic bank accounts. We're not talking anything that has a big fee or a complex structure to it at all, just multiple checkings or savings accounts at a regular bank. Then if you have a surplus, that's when we start talking about investment opportunities. So anything to add to that, maybe, Lisa?
I would just say that you might also consider, if you find that you're in an area where it's common to have fees or minimum balances for those types of checking or savings accounts that you need, also consider checking out a local credit union.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chase also, I bank with Chase, and recently they rolled out a saving strategy, so you can name your goal. So you could do something as simple as vacation fund or something like that, and you can designate how much money from each deposit you want to go to that. So I always tell my friends to do that for their emergency savings. You can set it up, say you want your emergency savings to be $5,000. Then you set up the second goal. Once that emergency savings is funded, it moves on to your next goal, and so forth. So Chase is really, really good with that, and no fees associated with the savings account.
Right. And I think that you should definitely look at credit unions. Like Lisa said, they're no fee. They started the Christmas Club account a long time ago. Like Sarah mentioned, having an account just set up for Christmas, and it is called the Christmas Club account. And you put a certain amount in every month, and then you can spend it in December and you empty it out. The other thing, take a look at your credit cards. Make sure you're getting whatever rewards are associated with those and that you're paying those off. And you can set up as many accounts as you need. I've always had multiple buckets of accounts. We have a vacation fund, we have a Christmas fund, we have our retirement, we have college, all those kinds of things, because that's how I think. And some of them grow and some of them contract based upon where we are in our lifestyle. And it doesn't matter if you're making a lot of money or a little bit of money or paycheck to paycheck. Even if you're just putting $5 away, that will help. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got about Christmas savings and spending for Christmas was buying a gift card once a month, so that you'll have gift cards at Christmas and you're not going out of money at Christmas. So you buy 12, $25 gift cards, you've got half of your Christmas covered, and it didn't cost you that much money in December.
Perfect. This is a little bit more of a technical question. And Shannon, I want to toss this one your way. It says, how do I know my retirement account is growing? It always looks the same. How can I check on the performance of my 401k? I think that's a really interesting question, given the highs and lows that we've seen here in 2020. So how can we do a look back?
So I love this question because I get it all the time from our participants in our plan. And one of the things I'm going to tell you is I want you to write down your account balance on 12/31 or your birthday or your anniversary every year, and go back as many years as you have participated in the plan. And one of the things you're going to see then is that your account has grown. It is very difficult because we tend to think short term to see the growth in any one quarter. And we go, oh my gosh, I've been investing and I'm not growing at all. And you look back and you go, wow, I only started this with $1. I started participating with $1, and now I have $500, and now I have $10,000, and now I have more than that. So if you start to do that, it'll remind you about the growth. And remember, the market goes up and down. So some years you're going to see a little bit down sometimes by December 31st. But remember, that's a buying opportunity. So we've all heard the adage, buy low and sell high. Yet what we all do is we sell low and buy high. We want to get on the bandwagon when Apple is $300 versus when Apple is $15. So by dollar cost averaging, which is what your retirement plan does for you from the get-go, you're going to be participating when the market's up and when the market's down, and you're going to see that growth. But the best way to do it is to chart a specific day every year, and then keep that chart in Excel or PowerPoint or wherever you are comfortable working, and just look back at it every once in a while and put it on the wall and say, this is part of my I Love Me wall, and I'm doing a good job because I've made a conscious sacrifice. I'm not getting that Starbucks latte this week because I put a 1% raise into my 401k this year, and look at what it's done for me. Lisa or Jackie or Sarah?
I think we need to take this I love me wall concept. I love that, Shannon. No, that's good. And I love having a concrete anniversary date to look back, because if it's arbitrary and random every year, you're really not going to see that measured change or be comparing it against a fair baseline.
Yeah, I think some retirement plan providers do a better job than others on their website of showing you how much you actually contributed to the account. So that's a number that I also like to go back and look at, going back and seeing how many of those dollars did I actually put in over that period of time versus what my account value is. Many of the projections that we look at for someone who's near retirement is that 60 to 70% of the account is from growth. And it's really only 30 to 40% that are the dollars that that individual put in. So, if you are with someone who can, gives you that data in an easy way, I like to look at that number too.
Great. All right, so another question just popped up. It says, what type of investing should a person do in order to receive dividend checks? So if you want to get a check in the mail, what type of investing would one have to do to get dividends?
You have to do some research. Number one. So there's two types of ways to get dividend checks. The first is buying value stocks or stocks that actually provide a dividend. And you have to understand what the dividend has been historically and if it's going to continue and how many shares you need in order to have a meaningful dividend check. If they're only paying 2 cents and you only have 5 shares, you're not going to receive a meaningful dividend check. The other way is through owning bonds and owning the actual bond, because then you're going to receive an interest check. But these are complicated strategies, but they are part of the strategy after you move out of the accumulation phase and out of the preservation phase, and you start getting into that distribution phase, which is how do you provide for that paycheck for life, and having an income stream where you do have stocks that provide dividends and you do have some bonds that help you provide that income for life is going to be important. But it is complicated, and you do have to, number one, want to do the research, and number two, not do knee-jerk reactions of, oh my gosh, Kimberly Clark just fell 10 points on the stock exchange, I need to sell, because then you're going to get rid of the dividend. You have to factor the dividend into the stock market movement. So that's very complicated, but it's a great strategy. But we do recommend that you ask for some help with that, or do a lot of your own research if that's your aptitude. Mm-hmm. And I'm the bond nerd here, so.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. So here is one for Lisa. The question came in, is borrowing from your 401k a good idea or a bad idea? Taking into account some of life's events like divorce or the untimely loss of a job, which certainly is a reality for many in this COVID environment that we've been in this year.
Well, I think, first of all, let me start by saying not every 401k or 403b plan has a loan feature. So not every plan allows for that to happen. And oftentimes that's because plan sponsors or your employers think we'd like to be paternalistic and help people stay saved for retirement. Mm-hmm. So borrowing from your 401k is probably somewhere down the line in terms of where I would go if I needed access to cash. It's nice to know that it's there in case that is where I get to. We have a great piece on our website called The Path to Cash. And the first place we're going to ask you to look is your emergency savings fund. And hopefully you have some money. Ultimately, our recommended goal is that you would have work up to having 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in that emergency savings. And the reason why you will hear us sing about emergency savings over and over and over again is because it provides that buffer so that should there be an untimely job loss or a divorce or some other financial challenge that comes up, that you're able to protect what you've already saved for retirement. That being said, Jackie, thank you. Jackie put in a link to the Path to Cash right into the chat. So if you start there and you can kind of work your way through that funnel to see where the retirement plan lands, it's nice to know that it's there should you need to get that far in the funnel, but hopefully we can accommodate what you need a little bit lower.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. We know that life happens, right? And sometimes we have to find a path to cash if something happens with our job. As your 401k advisors, we don't want to say never, but we want to say really, again, do your homework, do your research. Don't sacrifice your long-term safety, your long-term success with retirement for a short-term gain, and especially don't do it if it's for something, frivolous or fleeting. I've seen way too many vacations go on the 401k dime, and that's just what really kills us as advisors. So another question just popped in, and that I need to scroll up here. It says, can you use your 401k to buy a house? If so, are there penalties? Shannon, I'm going to bounce that one over to you.
So this is a loaded question. So you can use a 401k loan to help with the down payment if it's your first home and your loan payment period is a little bit longer. However, you cannot access your 401k account unless you have a distributable event in the plan. So if you're still active, you cannot use your 401k account to buy a house because you can't take any money out except in that loan feature. So you can't say, I want to take out my Roth 401k money and put that into my house account because you're still working. Remember, the only distributable events are age 59 and a half, if your plan sponsor and your 401k or your 403b has adopted it, retirement, disability, or separation, or when you're no longer here. So we don't want those to happen to you. So we would highly recommend that you look at outside savings for a new mortgage or refinancing, et cetera. But if you had to use your 401k, you could use the loan, and instead of having a 5-year payment period, it would extend to 30, but it's only for your first house. So if it's not your first house, it's not even an option.
Great, thanks, Shannon. And this is a more general question, but I think it's a great one. It quite simply says, I'm new to investing. How do I get started? And Lisa, I'm going to ask you to take a first crack at that one, and then I'm sure the rest of us will have a couple things to chime in as well.
Great. Well, that's really it's a small question, but a lot to unpack there. I think the first step, Jackie mentioned this earlier, is understanding what your goals are. So what is it that you're saving or investing for? We talked a little bit about college savings at the beginning. We've talked about emergency savings. Or you may just get to a point where you find, I have kind of fulfilled all of my savings goals for the goals that I have already set, and I am doing a great job saving, and I need to know, where can I save next? So in terms of savings, first starting with that goal, and then understanding what vehicles are available to save for that goal. So for example, when we talked about college savings, we talked about 529s, which are specifically designed for use in college, or education savings more broadly. And there are other vehicles. You could use a taxable account to save for college and just have it earmarked as this is a bucket of money, like Sarah talked about. This bucket is earmarked for college, even though it's not in a 529 vehicle. And then after you've decided what your goal is, how much you need to save to reach that, what vehicle, what type of investment or what type of account you're going to open, then we'll look at the investments themselves and understanding, okay, am I investing in mutual funds, stocks, bonds? Am I someone who wants a professional money manager to make those investment decisions for me? Or am I someone who wants to research? Shannon was talking about researching value stocks and bonds earlier. Am I someone who's going to want to research and call my own shots in that account? So really, if I could break it down, it's understand what your goals are, understand how much you need to save, where you're going to save, and then what you're going to be invested in. I'm sure there's more to add. Jackie?
I think that's a great point, Lisa. And as a new investor too, I think it's just really getting curious about investing and understanding that you don't know all the answers. But for me, what fueled me is I heard a speaker one day, she said, the biggest way that we're going to close the income gap is for women to get involved in investing. And it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to think of yourself as a day trader, but get curious about it. It's a really interesting thing. And I think that as women, we should really grasp onto investing and watching the markets, what's happening. I think women are great at picking awesome companies and having that intuition about what a good company is to invest in and mutual funds and all that jazz. And Shannon, you've done a really good job with the younger folks at SRP and getting them curious about investing and their future.
Very nice way of saying I'm old, but thank you.
No.
Yes. No, I think it's really important to, as Jackie said, be curious, start with something that you like, and then watch that. You don't have to invest in it. See what you like. Kimberly Clark makes diapers. Watch what it does. Some of our best stocks are not stocks that everybody's heard of. You don't need to have Netflix or Google which is Alphabet, or Facebook. You can watch some of the more boring stocks or some stocks that no one else has heard of yet, but you've heard of because you happen to use their products. Follow it for a little while and then decide if you want to put a little bit of money towards it. And remember that if you really do want to close that income gap, you do have to take that step from saver to investor. And I hate to tell you guys this, but if you're participating in your 401k plan, you are an investor.
Yeah, Shannon, I was just going to say, at the most basic level, getting started with investing, the easiest, best, and most cost-effective way usually to get started with making an investment is right through your payroll into your company-sponsored retirement plan, which most of you, because you're here today, likely have with SRP as the advisor. So don't think that you're not investing. You are an investor if you are in your 401k or 403b. And if you're maxing that out, meaning contributing up to the IRS limit, and you still have money above and beyond that to invest for your future, that's where some more complex decision making comes in. Some people are going to take an interest in that. Others are going to want to partner with an expert to get some professional oversight, guidance, advice, and planning. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, SRP can assist with that for assets that are completely separate from what you're investing through your workplace plan. So if that's of interest to you, we could certainly talk about helping you, or you could seek out your own professional to partner with in that regard. But, some people are going to want to really roll up their sleeves, dig in, and manage it themselves. Others are going to want to partner, and that's just down to a personal preference. But don't forget that if you're in your 401k or 403b, you are indeed an investor. Quick note, Shannon, could you just comment one more time? Because there was a question that said, didn't fully understand the circumstances for being able to use 401k fund for housing down payment. Does the possibility exist only if it's my first house and I'm already retired?
So I think there's a couple things to unpack. So first of all, if you are still working in your plan and you're participating in your 401k, okay, you can take a loan for any reason. If you are wanting to buy your first house, put a down payment on your first house, you can extend your loan period from 5 years to 30. So that's the first thing, okay? But going back to our first conversation about number one, does your plan sponsor even offer a loan for your retirement plan? And number two, is your retirement plan the best place to get this particular loan? Secondly, if you are going to retire, you can use your 401k assets for anything you'd like. You're going to pay taxes on them if it's pre-tax. So it's not your first house and your retirement. It's do you have a loan? And the only way you can get that 30-year period for the loan is if it's your first home. So we don't recommend tapping into your 401k for the loan for those purposes, but you cannot access your 401k for any other reason while you are still active other than a loan or those distributable events. So it's not a Christmas club where you can say, you know what, I'm buying my second house and I'm refinancing and I need $5,000 for closing costs. And I'm just going to go take $5,000 out of my 401k. The government set up restrictions, or on my 403b, pretty, difficult restrictions to access this money because it is meant for retirement. So that's what we're trying to do.
Great. Thank you so much for adding some clarity to that, Shannon. And with that said, we are going to wrap up our event for today. I want to personally thank every one of you for tuning in, and especially for those of you that bravely and confidently typed questions into the chat feature and helped keep the conversation going today. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to engage with you. We are all on this path together. And so to be able to kind of bounce ideas, share perspectives, multi-generational perspectives is a true honor for us here at SRP. The next big women's milestone coming up is on March 8th. It is National Women's Day, and we are making plans to have another Fierce Finance event in celebration of that day. So please stay tuned for information on that as we turn the page to 2021. I did want to remind you, as we did in our last session, that we prepared a resource sheet specifically to support the Fierce Finance messaging and some influencers, bloggers, content providers out there that we think have a strong voice in this space. And you can scan the QR code or visit the link that you see at the bottom of this page to access that on our website. And then lastly, if you have any questions for us at SRP, whether it relates to your retirement savings plan or about help outside of your retirement savings plan, feel free to email us at plantoday@srpretire.com, and we would be honored to get back to you and help or point you in the right direction as best we can. So on behalf of Jackie, Lisa, Shannon, and all of us at SRP, we wish you all happy holiday season and stay safe. And thank you once again for joining us today. Take care.